Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we're going to be trying out a spicy one. So these Hardened scales, Agatha Soul Cauldron, kind of artifact shells have been popping up more in the Pioneer format. I think it's being played to some extent in Modern as well. Could be viable in Historic. We could take a look. However, Divine Purge does exist in that format. And Mono Green Devotion is very, very popular in that format, so Karn shuts it off. But we now have kind of a critical mass of Hardened Scale style effects. So Hardened Scale, basically if a counter would be put on a creature, you put that many +1 instead. Unfortunately, I have to do 2 and 2 arts because I had 2 of these and 2 of these. So we're playing Mismatch. We also have the Ozolith, which is legendary but performs a similar effect. Could put counters on it at a sorcery speed for 2 mana and can cycle as well if needed. So I found like a couple lists. I tweaked it a bit. The list was running like 3 Springleaf. Usually with Springleaf, you only want to see 1 copy. The other copies usually aren't the best. And I kind of like the idea of having an extra experimental synthesizer. I'm playing Voltage Surge over Torch the Tower. They're pretty much the same bargain-esque effects, but this scales and deals 4 damage, which is reasonable for like Old Growth Troll. It's reasonable for like Adeline, stuff of that nature. So something to keep in mind. We have Iron Apprentice. So it enters the battlefield with a 1/1 counter. When it dies, if it had counters on it, you move it to another creature. Ozolith stockpiles those counters on it. So when you kind of recycle those counters. Hangerback Walker lets you put a bunch of counters on. If it dies, then you get a bunch of Thopters, which is kind of cool. And you'll notice like a lot of these have activated abilities. This does. You have your Steel Overseer that can make it so you put counters on your other artifacts. So Soul Cauldron steals all these abilities. Also puts counters. Patchwork Automaton, Ward 2, that gets bigger whenever you cast artifacts. And then we have Voldaren Thrillseeker, which we play for the Sacrifice ability. And then you can imprint it under the Agatha Soul Cauldron, so then all your creatures with counters can then be flung at your opponent's face. So the one thing that just looking at the list got a lot of cool synergy to it. I'm a little concerned with the card advantage. And this is something as we play the games, if we want more copies of the synthesizer in the deck. That would be kind of my initial kind of thought, is more of these like cheap card advantage style engines. You could also look at something like Mishra's Research Desk as another option. Mana base, you got a Murex, it makes artifact tokens, which kind of plays nice. Mutavaults as well, kind of mixed into there. Now notably, the Murex tokens are artifacts. However, the Mutavault is not an artifact, so when you have something like Steel Overseer, it doesn't necessarily work like that. Sideboard I kind of rebuilt. So something I figured out, I learned today, Jengantha doesn't allow you to cast Hangerback Walker. Even though it's not colored, it's 2 of the same. I didn't realize that was the case, but you learn something every day. So I got some Rending Volleys in here. For the blue-white matchups, Haywire Might for artifact enchantments, Obliterating Bolt for like 4 toughness and exile, Unlicensed Hearse for graveyard hate. We have 2 copies. Hate how this sideboard is. Filigree's Silex, good against the creativity matchups. You can exile their tokens since it's 0 mana. Clothis is just a stickier way, gains you some life as well. And then I opted to kind of tweak in the sideboard which Stalker Frenzy I want to try out. I want to have access to a 5 damage removal spell, and since we have a lot of cheap creatures, it should be easy to reduce the cost of this card. And then a throwback, Karn Scion of Urza notably makes artifact tokens for its minus, provides us card advantage as well. So something I want to try out in this deck to see how it works. Another card I'd consider my favorite Planeswalker, Chandra Torch of Defiance, but we'll see how that one goes. So as always, the intent is to test. It's to find out if this deck is viable, if we want to change things around, and just kind of see what's new and exciting. While winning games is kind of the goal, it's not the be-all, end-all. We're not, making the Pro Tour off this, so we test. I'm kind of less focused on rank, to be honest. I used to push Mythic like in the first day or 2. I'm just not as inclined to do that anymore. I did it for like 2 years. So you'll notice with like the content itself, I'm more going to be focusing on informative play. Something I put out today was a full sideboard guide for standard mono red aggro. It's a deck that I am going to be taking to a tournament. So I'm learning kind of the ins and outs of it, putting together some sideboard guides. I'm going to look to expand in that. And I think the direction I want to take the channel is less, you know, trying to spike into top 250 and instead focusing more on providing more informative content. So having the meta breakdowns as well as sideboard guides, kind of things of that nature. This one looks kind of cool. Let's try it out. We got scales. It's kind of cool. Got one of them on pre-release. Okay, so the thing is with mono green, it might be a bit scary because of activated abilities is going to shut off with Karn. So it's something to be mindful of there. I do have the Alpine Moons. This is probably the matchup I least wanted to run into just because of the Karns. Now, notably with Voldaren Thrill Seeker, it will make it so I can't kill it. So they do have a pause, so that could be Beseiju. Because the thing is, Thrill Seeker gives the ability to Hangerback Walker. Hangerback Walker being the artifact. So they did have the Beseiju, so they were opting to see if I targeted the Hangerback Walker. We see Cavalier of Thorns come down here. So we can take the Cityscape Leveler here. Put counters, put counters. Drawing a lot of lands here, which isn't great. The one thing here, if they don't block, they're actually dead. So we'll see what they target here. I'm gonna take the Old Growth Troll here. I think we put the counters here. And then we fling, get 11 1/1s, and then pretty much lethal here. Which is pretty solid, like turn 4 if they didn't have the blocker there. Okay, so they storm here. I don't think storm is going to be enough. Alrighty, so taking them down, nicely done. So in this matchup, I do think we want the Alpine Moon. I think we want the Obliterating Bolts, and I think I want the Karns. Probably want Haywire Might. Haywire Might's a little interesting. While we can target some enchantments, target some of the artifacts, it does become worse with an active Karn out. So something to keep in mind there. I do think I want the Springleaf Drums out. I want to minimize the amount of activated abilities out of my artifacts. Klothys is something to consider. 4 to 5 damage doesn't matter much because we need to hit like 6. I don't think we want any of these style effects. There's Filigree Silex that we can hit 1-drops in the elves, but I don't think, again, that's necessarily where I want to be. The Cauldrons were good. I do think maybe cutting an Ozolith in this matchup's fine. And then I'm inclined to cut the Steel Overseers. They seem like one of the... Maybe trim a couple. Having Haywire. I think we cut an Ozolith. I might just cut both the Ozoliths. So my thought here, this always will put the counter, like this doubles up, which is what we want. This kind of recycles things, which could be reasonable, but I think it's worse because it doesn't do much on its own. So I still want some density of creatures. Klothys, the thought is it could gain us some life. and can attack their graveyard. It's just a reasonable threat on its own. I don't think we can't animate it, so maybe it's wrong. Okay, let's do it like that. And this is the thing, like, we're learning this deck, so we want to talk through the sideboard decisions, seeing what should come in, what shouldn't. Obviously, if we get Alpine Moon early on Nykthos, it's very good. This hand is reasonable. I think here we're just going to kill the elf. That slows him down quite a bit. So we do notice this hand much slower. So I'll probably go Synthesizer this turn. Opponent's having a much better start this game. Especially if they go with Blue Chronos. So I have Voltage Surge available. Let's see what we hit. Think, what's the wording on this? Until the end of turn. I think I might still want access to it. I feel like if we're going to lose this game, we're going to lose it by a mile. Fortunately, I'm one off from a Beseju turn. So if they do hit Nykthos here, it's pretty bad. Yeah, because now they can untap, so it really depends on their payoff here.
Let's get moving.
Pretty much dead. Kiora taps Nykthos, Karn gets Cityscape Leveler, and then I die. I think we run it back. I just think this is a really bad matchup, to be honest. Like, we aggro them game one, and I think that's what it comes down to, but Mono Green's a very unfriendly deck to play into. We don't have Hardened scales. I think we mulligan. I think we just get rid of Haywire Might here. I do think I want another Soul Cauldron. Seems to be the card that provides us the most utility. Might have been wrong. I don't think I want Ozolith. Really needed a land. Missing land there hurts. Would have dramatically sped up our clock. Because now I'm kind of forced into killing the old growth here. Would have loved to have that land last turn. We're dead here. No land's a nice start. little bit of a rough spot. They always have Nykthos. Like, once they get going, it's just too much. I kind of wish they'd do something to nerf this deck. Honestly, even just like hitting Kiora could be a reasonable way to approach it. It limits the amount of like stupidity. Because like having Karn, fine, you get your wishboard elements of it. Now we're flooding out. Okay. We did the cool shit in game 1. Mono green's gonna be a bit problematic. I do think I want another Soul Cauldron. I think we want to hit it every game. I also think we want the full package. I don't think Ozolith is where we want to be. So I'm going to trim an Ozolith, and I think I'm going to trim a Springleaf Drum. I'm going to play another Synthesizer, another Cauldron. Against mono green... Because the problem too is like we need the Alpine Moon early, kind of just a race at that point. I think we just give it a go. I think we just gotta assume that mono green's a tough matchup. If we keep running into it, then this might just not be the best deck for this format. Certainly win, like we demonstrated in game 1, but it's not like they're making sideboard decisions differently, and we answered the elf in both games on turn 1, which is a little discouraging in that case. You would think, okay, I answered it on 1. Okay, got Scales into Ozolith. This is likely sack. Heroic. This is probably a bad matchup. We don't interact with them. Arcanist, Virtuoso. So we're probably dead here. Yeah, I'm increasingly thinking this... Because the thing is, this is like a faster linear deck than us. Okay, take 12. Angerback Walker. I mean, they need another trample enabler here. We do play around God's Willing, which is nice. They could have Monstrous Rage. Monstrous Rage does get us. But they can't God's Willing us. So they've already seen 2 angers. They'll have 6 cards that kill us on the spot. Like if I could keep chumping here. You have the rage. Yeah. See a lot of cards there. Okay, so in this matchup, we want the Rending Volleys, we want the Bolts, we want the Witch Stalker. Probably want the Filigree as well. In terms of coming out, Ozolith, Springleaf, from a Soul Cauldron, from an Ozolith. Cut all the Steel Overseers. So we get around the protection there. I think if we could like overload on removal, we could be okay. So the thing to remember, like the double strike kind of got us in there. The Heroic deck got a lot better with Monstrous Rage because now you have 8 1-mana trample enablers and the Rage just keeping trample on at all times. I was playing it in best of 1 and you could very easily turn 3 kill people in the format. The one thing to consider too is our deck's pretty bad into Claim the Firstborn. Well, that's certainly not a hand we want to keep. We just keep up the mana. Get this going. So in this matchup, you want forward is more impactful, so we're going to do this. You want to do it when they're down on protection. They set an upkeep stop, so they may have been trying to scry. So you actually don't want to do this in combat because they get the counter. Kind of annoying that they had the haste enablers both time. So again, just prioritizing. The one thing is we're hoping that we've answered their like initial wave of creatures. Not good, kids. That is good. That was a mistake of attacking there. Or was it? It was a mistake. I'm hoping that they play a spell. I gotta do this if they have another God's Willing. I mean, if we got 4 removal spells and they're gonna beat us, so not encouraging. Not encouraging. We're just dead. Like, that's what you want from the deck, but if you're drawing that many, do this one more just to see. This is why we try out stuff. Like, it could easily get a 5-0 on MTGO, but some of the decks don't port over well to Explore. Others just at times get hit by the meta a little bit different. I don't think we... Let's try. I know we don't have creatures, but we have a lot of the enablers. And Synthesizer can be a reasonable play the following turn. Do it on turn 3. Have Synthesizer up. It's likely Angels. I should have played Synthesizer in case I hit aligned. Green-white ramp? So something cool we can do here is on our end step, we can activate the Mutavault. It'll be tapped, but then we can exile the Llanowar Elf.
Not to brag, but my friends kind of I love to make a splash.
This is just like another Karn pile, then it's going to be annoying. So it's basically just Karn with white cards. I think we need to do this. It's not great, but it keeps him off Devotion. Gives us another line here. The problem is if they have like Storm, they get us.
The ocean surges, life thrives.
I really don't like Explore. This format's really just cannibalized by like a few decks. It's very hard to brew in this format. Are you playing 2 Visages? blood. Give it one more turn here, but I think we're largely dead.
One drop ripples and grows.
We're not catching up from this. Alpine Moon, Haywire Might, Clothis. Bring in the Karns and the Bolts. I think like last game, we're going to get rid of Springleaf, get rid of Ozolith, get rid of 2 Steel Overseers, get rid of 1 Ozolith, 1 Cauldron, 1 Thrill Seeker. Like, I could play Burning Hands. There's ways I could combat, but we saw, like, it's gonna ruin your other matchups. It's just dependent on how aggressive in this format you want to get. Let's see how this works out. Always drawing lines. Cool, 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 cool. Always that.
Just can't help myself.
I think the line is to try to get like a fling win here. But like we're a Karn away from just losing this game. Something that's like really been irritating me, just like manual tappers for like no reason. So I could put a bunch of counters. So that does force him to block. So they're dead next turn. They need Karn into Pithing Needle. Yeah, that was hot. Probably don't want Clothis. Maybe we play Steel Overseer. The other Thrill Seeker. Karn's probably too slow. Like, I'm unlikely to be winning a fair game. If I'm winning with these, like, janky kind of combo-esque turns. So let's try like that. I'm just a little concerned with, like, Steel Overseer is a really bad card when you're, like, not spamming. Jeez. I'd love to keep that hand, but... Okay, this hand looks pretty solid. Let's do this. I got an answer on one if they have elf. I do want to land here. Kiora's... This synthesizer can find me a land, potentially. Obliterating Bolt takes him down to 6 though, which is where I think I need to do. So normally I wouldn't really want to do this, but since they missed lands,
I ebb and flow with battle.
I think we need to do this. It represents too much mana. Naturally, because why not? Storm the festival. Peace. Not drawing anything now. That was good. So the question here... So we have Soul Cauldron. I think it's just another Iron Apprentice. I can Soul Cauldron next turn. I can sack... So like this is part of the reason why I wanted to answer Kiora that turn, because it enabled so much. Of course they have Nykthos up too. With exact mana for it, so now they could Storm again. Okay, whatever. This game's done. So the deck can do some cool things. We got some cool wins out of it, but I think it's largely just underpowered into some of the good decks. Karn shuts it off. You don't really have a fast enough clock unless you're like hardcore comboing. But an interesting deck if you want to try something a little bit different out of the blue. Let me know what you think in the comments. Catch you next time. Thanks for watching.